You've already mentioned the European Commission guidance on handling of hazardous medicinal products. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
You should see the guidance as a guidance document. It guides you through the issue. It guides you through the issue of potential exposure to hazardous drugs. It's not a law. So that means that all what is written in the guidance is not a law, but parts of the guidance are already law within Europe. There is, for instance, the obligation for the employer to give information to the employee who is working with these hazardous drugs. They have to provide you information how to handle it, how to manage it, and they are also obliged to give you training and education when you have to handle these drugs. So there is already quite a lot of law within the guidance which is available. But the practical things are mostly based on experience from people who are working with these hazardous drugs. For instance, the pharmacist, pharmacy technicians, when it comes to compounding preparation, they have a lot of experience. So a lot of good practice from the member states are within that guidance document. So if you read that chapter and you want to have more information about it, you just pick out the things that are relevant for you and you can check, does this meet my standard of practice I have nowadays? Are there issues to improve? That's, for instance, pharmacy. Then you have, of course, the nursing, which is the administration step. There is a lot of exposure. We know it from testing, from all kinds of studies done, that actually the nurses are the biggest group that are exposed to these hazardous drugs. So a lot of, I would say, precautions and measures should be focused on the nursing part. But there are good examples how you can improve conditions, working conditions, and safety for nurses within the guidance document. So, and then you have all the parts which are relevant, which are obliged actually by law. That's, for instance, that employers should provide and do a risk assessment of the drugs that are handled. Of course, a director of a hospital will not do it himself, but he has to appoint people showing, well, within our organization, there have to be people who do this job because it's obliged, and it's the management of a hospital who has the responsible to check for this. Then there are other parts in the guidance which have to be done. That's a monitoring process. If you do a risk assessment, you have to do also an exposure assessment, which is also obliged. And you see that these two parts, risk assessment and exposure assessment, is not done in hospitals nowadays. It's most hospitals don't do it, but they have to do it. So that's an obliged part within the guidance document. Then you have the other steps which are in the guidance, which is, for instance, veterinary sector. We have to deal with waste management. We have to deal with cleaning, all these kind of people. So all these sectors are within the guidance document. So, and it gives all kind of recommendations, advices how to handle potential exposure and risk within their sectors. Within the whole chain, the whole supply chain, from actually production till the end, waste management.
So what are the key steps?
Well, the key steps is first start with identifying the hazardous medicinal products, the hazardous drugs. And that's what should be done to get a start first. And that's what I said, the responsibility of the employer to get that done. And with help, of course, with other people who are, really a specialist in this field. The second step, which is also obliged, is the risk assessment. You have to do a risk assessment when you are handling these hazardous drugs, which is also responsible of the employer. And the work should be done also by specialists. Then the third thing I would like to stress is the monitoring. The exposure, because when you know the exposure, then you can decide based on these results, are additional steps needed and where should we focus on. And that part is also obliged by law, so it's the responsibility of the employer to get that organized too, of course done by specialists in the field. So I would say these three are the main issues, and you have to do that frequently. You have to update it and so on. So it's a continuous process to be done.
Mm-hmm. Clearly, there's a lot of technical knowledge required to carry out this kind of work. Now, assuming that pharmacists and technicians already have their basic training, my question is, what kind of additional training is required?
I think in most cases that will be a part already on the basic education before you get started with handling these drugs. But as soon as you start, you should get education and training continuously. And we see often that people get trained when they start, and because sometimes you need kind of approval to get started when you handle these drugs. But then it stops. That's the only training they got, and that's it. And then you see also that by the routines they have, they do the work daily and they just continue what they are doing. And they are mostly not so critical. So they think what we are doing is fine and it's an ever-going process and there is no reason to worry about. But that's not the case. In practical, it's like there is an evolution, there is a process going on. There are new drugs coming. There are other issues in terms of the devices using the end products, syringes, bags, they change cassettes and whatever. So actually the training is a continuous process. So they should be done at the start with the basics, so you get approved to do it, but then it should be repeated once a year or once in 2 years or whatever. But it should be a continuous process to make people, and that's really irrelevant, to make them continuously aware about the potential risk of being exposed. And when you do work for many years, then sometimes you forget things, or you're not worried and so on. But the continuous education is really relevant to have that awareness going on continuously. So that's really important. And it's, of course, the responsibility, again, for the employer to get that done. So you have to be trained, educated continuously, paid by the employer, and it should be offered during work time. So you need not to come for a free evening or free weekend to do this training. It should be offered during your working time. And that's also set all ruled by law. So it's nothing new, but it's practically mostly not done.